"Hey there, desk lady, what's your rank?" The question cut through the air like a misplaced bullet. It wasn't shouted, but loud enough for everyone in the registration line to hear, and that was precisely Petty Officer Jake Morrison's intention. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Veterans Story channel so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. The base at Coronado was alive with noise that afternoon. The deep, commanding horn of the USS Coronado echoed over San Diego Bay, blending with the thunder of two FA-18s soaring off the nearby runway. The air smelled of salt, jet fuel, and adrenaline, an ordinary scent for extraordinary people. Selena Hart didn't flinch. Sitting behind the registration desk, she adjusted her pen, her fingers steady as if tuned to a metronome. One by one, she stamped security passes with practiced precision. Each press of the seal timed at almost exactly 2 seconds apart. Her uniform wasn't military. Her badge read Civilian Administration. Yet everything about her posture, straight spine, centered shoulders, the calm rhythm of motion, radiated discipline. Morrison leaned against the counter, still grinning. He was 24, fresh from completing one of the hardest training programs in existence. The SEAL trident gleamed proudly on his chest, new but already treated like armor. His teammates, 6 men with matching confidence and restless energy, gathered behind him, feeding on his bravado. "You didn't answer me," Morrison continued, voice teasing but sharp. "What's your rank, miss?" "Receptionist." "Petty Officer Morrison," Selena replied evenly, eyes fixed on her clipboard. "Your guest list has been confirmed. Please direct your family to Section C." Her tone was clipped, neutral, professional. To most, it sounded polite. To Morrison, it sounded like dismissal. He pushed the folder toward her, the motion harder than necessary. Papers shifted, but she calmly straightened them again. Then a radio crackled nearby, static and then a deep voice. "Gate 3 reports potential disturbance. Possible breach check." In one smooth motion, Selena stood. Her body straightened in a way no civilian ever truly learned. Her eyes scanned toward the sound, sharp, assessing. Then she relaxed again as if nothing had happened. Morrison didn't notice the detail, but Master Chief Rodriguez, watching from the security booth, did. The line at registration moved slowly as families waited to enter the ceremony grounds. Children clung to parents' legs. Spouses adjusted medals on crisp uniforms. Everyone was proud, emotional, waiting to watch their loved ones receive commendations for courage. The young SEALs, though, were restless. Morrison turned back toward Selena, eager to reclaim attention. "Seriously," he said, voice louder now. "You work on a SEAL base and don't even know how to address rank? You sure you're in the right place?" The nearby families fell silent. One woman guided her son aside, away from the tension. Selena paused her stamping. She raised her eyes slowly, meeting Morrison's with a look that was neither defensive nor afraid, just steady, unreadable. "I understand enough to do my job effectively, Petty Officer Morrison. Do you require any assistance beyond that?" It wasn't sarcasm. It was control. But that calm tone somehow ignited his pride. "What I require," he said, leaning in, "is a little respect for what we do here. You're surrounded by the nation's elite warriors. Show some recognition." The smirk on his face drew uncomfortable glances. His teammates chuckled nervously, unsure whether to join or retreat. Rodriguez finally stepped out from the booth. At 52, he'd seen every shade of arrogance come and go. The look in his eyes said he'd seen this scene before. A young soldier desperate to prove superiority, mistaking humility for weakness. "Is there a problem here?" His voice cut through the space like a command, calm but final. Morrison straightened immediately. "No problem, Master Chief, just clarifying some things about military culture." Rodriguez's gaze moved between them. Selena had already resumed her work, unbothered. Her expression didn't betray even a flicker of irritation. "Petty Officer," Rodriguez said, his tone measured, "why don't you and your team focus on preparing for the ceremony? The Admiral will arrive shortly." It wasn't a reprimand, but it was close enough. Morrison nodded, turning away, but his parting words carried like a small blade. Guess some people just don't understand what it means to be part of something bigger than themselves. The insult hung in the air. Selena didn't respond. She simply reached for the next form and continued stamping, steady, precise. 50 people had heard the exchange. None said a word. When the crowd thinned, Rodriguez approached her desk, his expression softening. "Everything all right, Miss Hart?" "Yes, Master Chief," she said, her voice low but firm. Just another day at the office. As she turned to organize paperwork, something metallic slipped from her clipboard. A coin. It hit the ground with a faint, distinct ring. Rodriguez bent slightly. The pattern engraved on the edge made his breath still. It wasn't a novelty token. It was a challenge coin, worn, scratched, carried by someone who had seen real action. Selena retrieved it quickly, tucking it away without comment. Outside, the ceremony field gleamed under afternoon sun. Families filled the bleachers. The Pacific shimmered in the distance. Yet even amid the celebration, Rodriguez couldn't stop glancing at her, at the way she moved, calculated and aware, scanning exits as she directed guests with flawless efficiency. Every action was deliberate. Every step measured. He had seen that kind of precision before, on missions where a single hesitation could mean death. And now he couldn't help but wonder, who exactly was Selena Hart? By the time the Admiral's convoy rolled through the gates, the sun had begun to soften, gold light spilling across the parade ground like polished brass. The roar of engines faded into ceremonial silence as sailors and families straightened, the chatter dissolving into disciplined stillness. Selena stood near the registration tent, clipboard in hand, her gaze flicking between security checkpoints and seating rows. She didn't appear nervous, but her body language betrayed something deeper, a readiness that didn't fit her supposed civilian role. Rodriguez, watching from a few paces away, saw it again, that subtle shift of weight to the balls of her feet, that perfect, balanced stance, ready to move, react, command. He had seen men and women like that before, operators who had lived long enough under pressure for vigilance to become muscle memory. And he knew, with an instinct honed by decades, that Selena Hart wasn't just a receptionist. The ceremony began. Admiral Thomas stepped to the podium, his voice carrying over the crowd with calm authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor those who have served with courage, discipline, and unwavering devotion. These individuals represent the best of what our Navy stands for." Applause followed, warm, genuine, proud. Selena, meanwhile, wasn't watching the stage. She was scanning the perimeter. Every 20 seconds, her eyes shifted. Entrance gate, side fence, crowd, rooftops, back again. It was subtle enough not to draw attention, but to a trained eye like Rodriguez's, it was unmistakable. Surveillance behavior. Morrison noticed her too. From his seat in the front row, he had laughed off Rodriguez's earlier warning, but now, watching her calmly orchestrate the flow of families and maintain perfect situational awareness, he felt a small, disquieting tug of doubt. "She's something else," whispered Danny Torres beside him. Morrison shrugged, forcing a smirk he didn't feel. "She's organized. That's all." But the confidence in his tone had faded. When the first award was presented, to Petty Officer Maria Santos for battlefield medical evacuation, Selena's expression softened. The applause, the emotion, the salutes, they struck a chord somewhere behind her composed exterior. Rodriguez saw her lips tighten, her eyes glaze with a brief, faraway look, the unmistakable flicker of memory. He'd seen that look before, too. The haunted calm of those who had seen too much. As the Admiral continued, recognizing hero after hero, Selena's focus shifted again. This time to the logistics of the ceremony itself. She directed late arrivals to open seats, communicated quietly into a radio pinned beneath her jacket, and gestured for a Marine security officer to move slightly left to cover a blind angle near the bleachers. No one told her to do any of it. But somehow, every move improved the overall field of view for the guards. It was like watching instinct blend with choreography. Rodriguez found himself murmuring under his breath, "You've done this before, haven't you?" When the Navy hymn began to play, the crowd stood, hands over hearts. Selena did too, though not just standing. She came to attention, feet together, hands aligned, chin level. The stance was so sharp, so perfect, that even the SEALs standing nearby glanced her way. A civilian doesn't do that, Morrison thought. Not like that. Not exactly like that. He felt a strange tightening in his chest, a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. Maybe they'd been wrong about her. When the last notes faded, and families began to mingle, Rodriguez crossed the field toward her. She was collecting discarded guest tags, methodically sorting them when he stopped beside her. "Miss Hart," he said, his tone measured but curious. "You coordinate logistics well, but there's more to it than that, isn't there?" Selena's eyes met his briefly. "I do what's necessary, Master Chief." That's an operator's answer. She hesitated, just for half a breath, and that was enough for Rodriguez to know he'd hit close to truth. Before she could reply, a crackle came through his radio. "Security to command. Possible movement near Gate 2. Unknown vehicles stopping outside perimeter." Rodriguez's demeanor shifted instantly. His voice dropped an octave. "All stations confirm visual. Stay calm." He turned toward the command booth, already issuing silent hand signals to nearby SEALs. But Selena moved first. Without instruction, she scanned the field, calculating positions of cover and sightlines, then spoke. "Calm. Decisive. Recommend overwatch at buildings 8 and 15. They offer elevation and clear angles to both the gate and access roads." Rodriguez froze. How would she know that? Those were internal security references, not accessible to civilian staff. "How do you—" he began, but was interrupted by a burst of static. Then, "Confirmed suspicious package at Gate 3. This is not a drill." A gunshot cracked in the distance. Chaos. Families screamed. Officers shouted. The crowd rippled with confusion. And in the middle of it all, Selena Hart's voice rose clear and commanding. "All civilians move toward Building 12, Route Alpha. SEALs establish perimeter on Bravo and Delta. Security maintain radio discipline." The tone wasn't one of panic. It was command. Every soldier within earshot reacted instinctively, moving as if her words were part of the official chain of command. Even Rodriguez found himself obeying without question. He met her eyes once, and in that instant recognition dawned. The precision, the control, the authority. "Chief," he whispered. Then over the comms, Admiral Thomas's voice thundered through the static. "This is Admiral Thomas. Chief Hart, you have tactical command. All personnel, follow Chief Hart's directives immediately." For a moment, the entire base seemed to stop breathing. Morrison stared at her from across the field. Disbelief etched across his face. Did he just say chief? But there was no time for questions. Selena was already moving, coordinating, commanding, transforming chaos into control. And in that moment, everyone finally saw who she truly was. Not a receptionist, not a civilian, but a soldier, one who had walked away from the battlefield, only to be pulled back by instinct, duty, and something far older than either: purpose. The base transformed within minutes. What had been a quiet celebration only moments earlier now pulsed with the electricity of imminent danger. Commands echoed through the air, boots struck concrete in unison, and the once cheerful chatter of families turned into urgent shouts as they were shepherded toward safe zones. Selena, Chief Hart, stood at the center of the storm, her calm presence cutting through the confusion. Her voice carried through the chaos with crisp precision. "Building 8 team, report your visual. Building 15, confirm fields of fire. Civilian control status check on all evacuation routes." Her radio crackled back, one voice after another answering in rapid succession. "Building 8 secure. Northeast approach clear. Building 15 secure, visual on Gate 2 and 4. Awaiting further orders." The rhythm of their responses, the discipline in their tone. Rodriguez realized she had brought order back to the base through sheer command authority. No hesitation. No second-guessing. Morrison and his teammates, once cocky, now humbled, moved into formation at her direction. Their adrenaline was high, but their focus sharp. "Torres, cover west flank. Chavez, keep your team tight. Wilson, relay with security channel." Selena's commands were immediate and tactical. And though Morrison had never taken orders from her before, he found himself moving with total trust. "Chief Hart," Rodriguez called over the radio. "Gate 3 confirms hostile contact retreating toward the east perimeter." "No breach. Copy that," Selena replied. "Hold positions. Maintain overwatch until threat level returns to yellow." Her voice was even, almost serene, and yet beneath that calm was something unmistakable: experience. The kind earned only through the kind of missions that never made it into public record. When the radio finally fell silent, when the last confirmation came that the threat had been neutralized, a hush rolled across the parade ground. No casualties, no damage. Just stunned faces and the echo of what had almost been a tragedy. Selena lowered the radio, exhaling slowly. The tension in her shoulders eased, but only slightly. She wasn't celebrating, she was processing, scanning, ensuring that every contingency was accounted for before standing down. Rodriguez approached, his expression grave but filled with newfound respect. "Chief Hart," he said, deliberately using the title the Admiral had announced. "That was textbook crisis management. I've seen senior officers lose control under less pressure." She looked at him, her calm eyes betraying only the faintest trace of fatigue. "Thank you, Master Chief," she replied. It wasn't about control. It was about keeping people alive. He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Morrison, standing nearby, watched the exchange like a man seeing the world for the first time. The woman he had mocked just hours ago now stood as the reason they all remained unharmed. The weight of his arrogance hit him like recoil. As dusk fell, the ceremony area was cleared. Families reunited, officers debriefed, and the hum of normal base operations slowly returned. Yet under the surface, questions burned brighter than the sunset. Who was she, really? Rodriguez waited until most of the crowd had dispersed before approaching again. Selena was securing her equipment, her movements efficient but slower now, as though the adrenaline had finally begun to fade. "I'd like to finish our conversation," he said. She hesitated before nodding. "Of course, Master Chief." They walked toward a quiet area near the water's edge, the sound of waves folding against the docks like a heartbeat beneath the base's artificial silence. "You don't have to tell me everything," Rodriguez said, "but I've seen a lot of people in this uniform. What you did today, no civilian training covers that." Selena was quiet for several moments. The wind caught a loose strand of hair, brushing it across her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear and spoke softly. "There are things I've learned to leave behind," she said. "Things I was never supposed to use again. But sometimes life doesn't give you that choice." Rodriguez studied her face, understanding more than her words revealed. "So it's true, you were active duty." She looked out toward the horizon where the Pacific stretched endless and golden. "Once," she admitted. "But I made a decision to step away, to stop carrying the weight that comes with command. And yet, when it mattered, you carried it again." A faint, tired smile appeared. "I didn't have time to think about that." Later that night, long after the debriefs had ended and the lights around the parade ground dimmed, Selena sat alone in the security office, filling out reports. Her handwriting was meticulous, neat lines of efficiency masking the turmoil beneath. The events of the day replayed in her mind with photographic clarity. Morrison's taunting voice, the panic of the families, the sound of gunfire cracking through ceremony air, and then her own voice, steady, commanding, inevitable. She had thought that part of herself was gone, the part that once gave orders in deserts and jungles, that spoke calm into chaos. But the moment the threat appeared, instinct overrode denial. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman she hadn't been in years, poised, decisive, alive. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Rodriguez stepped in, holding a folder. "Admiral's report," he said, placing it on the table. "They're calling it a successful defense response. No casualties, minimal disruption." Selena nodded. "Good." He lingered a moment longer, then said quietly, "You know they're going to ask questions. About who you really are, I know. Are you ready to answer them?" She looked at him, and for the first time that day there was something fragile in her voice. "I'm not sure. But maybe it's time I stopped hiding." Outside, the base was calm again. The night air carried the low hum of generators, the soft clatter of distant machinery, and the endless whisper of the Pacific. In the barracks, Morrison lay awake staring at the ceiling, his thoughts looping endlessly around the same realization. He had spent months training to become the kind of soldier who could act under pressure. Yet today, when real chaos struck, it wasn't him who led. It was her. The woman he'd dismissed as unimportant had become the backbone of their survival. And as he closed his eyes, one truth sank in deeper than pride could resist. He had just witnessed what true leadership looked like. The following morning, the base woke under a pale gray sky. A light fog drifted in from the Pacific, softening the edges of the barracks and the tall flagpole that rose proudly above them. The air was heavy with salt and anticipation. Everyone knew what the day would bring. Questions, reports, and the quiet hum of rumors spreading faster than the tide. Selena arrived early. Her uniform was immaculate, her expression composed. Yet beneath that professional stillness was a war she hadn't prepared to fight. Not one of bullets or enemies, but of memory and identity. She stepped into the Admiral's office, saluted, and stood at attention. Admiral Thomas looked up from his desk, eyes tired but sharp. Rodriguez was already there, leaning quietly against the wall. "Chief Hart," the Admiral began, "please sit." She obeyed, folding her hands neatly on her lap. "You performed exceptionally yesterday," he said. "Your response was decisive, disciplined, and ultimately prevented what could have been a disaster. The base owes you more than gratitude. Thank you, sir. But there's the matter of your presence here." He paused, measuring his tone. "You were listed as civilian administration, not as active duty. Yet your actions, your access to restricted codes, and your tactical command indicate otherwise." Rodriguez spoke softly from the corner. "With respect, Admiral, if she hadn't been here, we'd be sending letters home instead of reports." Thomas nodded. "Agreed, but regulations still require clarity." "Who are you really, Chief Hart?" Selena held his gaze. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of a wall clock. Finally, she said quietly, "I was part of Strike Command 7, sir. Naval Intelligence Division. Classified operations, 8 years active." The Admiral's brows rose. Rodriguez exhaled slowly. "I resigned 3 years ago," she continued, "after my unit was lost on Operation Mirage Point. We were deep cover in hostile territory, and I was the only one who made it out. The after-action review concluded I'd followed orders, but the loss—" She paused, her voice tightening. "The loss was too heavy. I chose to step away." Thomas nodded slowly. "You went off the radar, changed your status. Civilian role under a different division name." "Yes, sir. And yesterday instinct took over." Silence hung between them. Outside, a distant gull cried over the bay. Rodriguez finally spoke. "She didn't just follow instinct, sir. She reactivated every skill she'd buried. That's not something you teach, it's something you live through." Thomas studied Selena for a long moment. "Do you want to come back?" Her answer came almost immediately. "No, sir. I want to keep serving, but differently. Not on the front lines, not where loss defines every breath. There are other ways to protect people." The Admiral considered her words, then nodded. "Then you'll have them. Official reinstatement isn't required. But from this moment, you'll serve as tactical liaison under my direct command. Operational only when necessary." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," Rodriguez smiled faintly. "Looks like the desk lady's been promoted." For the first time since the chaos, Selena allowed herself a small laugh, a sound that carried warmth, not weariness. Outside the office, the morning had grown brighter. The fog was lifting, and the rhythmic crash of waves echoed across the docks. Morrison waited near the administration building, his uniform pressed but his nerves frayed. He straightened when Selena approached. "Chief," he said, clearing his throat. "Ma'am," Selena stopped. The faintest trace of humor touched her lips. "Petty Officer Morrison, I owe you an apology," he said, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "I was out of line. I thought I knew what strength looked like. Yesterday proved me wrong." Her expression softened. "Apology accepted. But don't think less of yourself for learning. Every soldier faces that moment, the one that humbles them." He nodded slowly. "You really were one of us, weren't you?" "Still am," she replied, "just in a different uniform." There was something about the way she said it, steady, sure, that silenced the lingering doubt in him. She wasn't someone trying to prove worth. She was someone who had already paid her dues in full. Later, Rodriguez found Selena by the pier watching the water. The wind tugged gently at her hair. "You handled that like a pro," he said, standing beside her. She smiled faintly. Old habits. Old habits save lives." They stood in silence for a while, the sea stretching out before them like a vast, unspoken memory. Finally, Rodriguez asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" "Really back to the teams?" Selena shook her head slowly. "No, there's too much past behind that door. And I don't think I'd survive opening it again." "Maybe," he said, "but you just proved something yesterday. You didn't lose who you were. You just forgot how powerful it still is." Her eyes followed a passing ship on the horizon, the sunlight catching its hull in golden reflection. "Maybe," she echoed softly. "But maybe remembering is enough. That evening, the base returned to its rhythm. The sound of drills echoed from the field, and somewhere nearby, the flag was lowered as the last light of day faded into indigo. Selena sat alone at her desk once more. The same place where it had all begun. The spot where a careless joke had sparked the unraveling of her carefully guarded past. She opened her drawer and pulled out the coin. Again, the one that had fallen the day before. Its surface was worn smooth, edges dulled by time. She turned it over slowly, tracing the insignia of Strike Command 7 with her thumb. For years, she had seen it as a symbol of loss. Now, it felt like something else, a reminder not of pain but of endurance. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and whispered to the empty room, "Rest easy, brothers. I didn't forget." And as she slipped the coin back into her pocket, a faint smile crossed her lips. For the first time in years, Selena Hart felt at peace with who she was: soldier, survivor, leader, and most of all, someone who had found strength not in her past battles but in her ability to rise after them. The days that followed settled into a rhythm again, though something intangible had shifted across the base. The men and women who once passed by Selena Hart without a second glance now greeted her with quiet nods of respect. Word of her decisive leadership had spread, not through official channels, but in the subtle way soldiers carry legends, through whispers shared over coffee or during late-night watch rotations. She didn't seek attention, and she certainly didn't enjoy it. Yet wherever she went, conversations paused. Eyes followed her, not with gossip, but with something deeper: recognition. The Admiral's order had been clear. Chief Hart was to remain in her position under administrative cover, but with renewed tactical authority. That meant she was back in the chain of command, part ghost, part guardian. Her new mission wasn't about combat anymore. It was about preparing others for the moments when chaos arrived without warning, as it had that day. And so the receptionist became the quiet architect of readiness. One evening, just after sundown, Morrison knocked on her office door again. His uniform was dusted with sand from training, his expression tired but determined. "Chief," he said, standing at attention, "we're doing live drills next week." The guys were wondering if you'd oversee them. Selena looked up from her paperwork, an eyebrow raised. "You want me to run a SEAL readiness drill?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, and then quickly added, "with all due respect. The way you handled the last operation, it taught us more in 5 minutes than a week in training." She studied him for a long moment. His posture was sharper, his tone humbler. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something far more valuable: discipline born of experience. "Very well," she said finally. "But understand this, when I train you, I expect precision. No bravado. No shortcuts. You move with purpose or you don't move at all. Yes." "Chief," he said firmly, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. That week, under the fading light of dusk, the field once filled with ceremony became a crucible. Selena stood before the SEAL team, hands clasped behind her back, her voice even and commanding as she called out orders. The men moved through tactical formations, clearing mock zones, adapting under pressure. Every move they made, she corrected, not with humiliation but with sharp surgical feedback. "Your timing's off, Torres. Think before you sprint. Cover the angle, Wilson. Don't expose your flank. Morrison, remember, confidence doesn't win battles. Awareness does." Sweat rolled down their faces, breath heavy, but not one of them complained. They listened. They learned. By the end of the drill, the base lights had dimmed, and the sound of waves against the dock filled the silence that followed. Selena watched as the team regrouped, catching their breath. Rodriguez approached from behind, slow clapping with a proud grin. "Not bad for a woman who swore she was done with field work," he said. Selena allowed herself a quiet laugh. "Old instincts die hard." "Or maybe," he replied, "they just wait for the right reason to wake up again." Later that night, after the last of the team had left, Selena lingered by the empty field. The sea breeze brushed her face, carrying the faint scent of salt and diesel. The moon hung low over the Pacific, bright enough to paint a silver path across the waves. She closed her eyes and listened, to the soft rhythm of boots fading into the distance, to the hum of the bass alive with unseen energy, and to her own heartbeat steady against the quiet. For years, she had run from the ghosts of her past, every mission, every loss, every voice that fell silent in the dark. She had buried herself in anonymity, convinced that survival meant disappearance. But yesterday proved something else. Survival wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of another kind. Rodriguez joined her at the fence, his arms crossed as he watched the horizon. You ever wonder why you came back here of all places? Selena smiled faintly. Maybe I didn't choose it. Maybe it chose me, he nodded. That's the thing about duty, it doesn't care how long you hide. It always finds you again. They stood in silence for a while, two soldiers bound by shared understanding, the kind that needed no words. As dawn broke the next morning, the base stirred once more. Flags rose, engines hummed, and the world moved forward as it always did. Selena watched from her desk as new recruits filed past, young faces filled with pride, nerves, and dreams of glory. She saw herself in them, decades younger, before the weight of command and consequence. But now she carried something different. Not fear, not regret, but peace. She reached into her pocket, feeling the cool metal of her coin once more. Turning it in her palm, she thought of the ones who hadn't come back. She thought of how their lessons lived on, not in stories or medals, but in the small, invisible acts of strength left behind. And for the first time in a long time, Selena whispered, not to the ghosts but to herself, it's not about how long you fight. It's about what you stand for when the fighting stops. Outside, the sun climbed higher, glinting off the ocean and the shining insignias of those walking past. The sound of the flag snapping in the wind filled the air, crisp and defiant. Selena Hart stood, straightened her shoulders, and walked toward the door. She was no longer the woman hiding behind a desk. She was once again what she had always been, a guardian of those who serve, a leader who rose from silence and a soldier who found redemption not through war, but through purpose reborn. Before the screen fades to black, a voiceover echoes softly. Every uniform hides a story. Every soldier carries battles unseen. Some wars never end, but the courage to face them. That's what defines the veteran. Fade out. Title appears. The Veteran's Story, Episode 1. The Desk Lady Who Commanded the Storm.